Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cantaloupe Systems Seed Spotlight, Your Reports, Your Way webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, I wanted to provide some basic guidance for this webinar. You will notice on the right side of your screen, there's a GoToMeeting questions box. Here is where you can list your questions that you have for our speakers today. We will take time at the end of the presentation to answer as many of the questions that we get presented to our group, so please feel free to post at any time. Today's webinar is presented by Justin Grant, our VP of Product here at Cantaloupe, and Duncan Smith, President and COO at All Star Services. Justin has been with Cantaloupe for 6 years and has served actively in leading the product team. Justin and his team define the product roadmap and work with customers and the Cantaloupe team to always focus on making seed better. Prior to Cantaloupe, Justin spent 20 years in engineering and product management roles. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you so much. And I wish I still had that much hair.
Duncan Smith, as I mentioned, is the president and COO of All Star Services, a vending, OCS, and micro-market company that is based out of Port Huron, Michigan. Duncan represents the third generation within the family business and has been with the company for over a decade. The company has multiple branches that service both mid-Michigan and southeast Michigan. In 2008, Duncan led the early adoption of telemetry, dynamic scheduling, pre-kitting, and cashless at All Star. He continues to use technology to push All Star to be an industry leader in efficiency. Welcome, Duncan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me here today. And just correction on that, I'm the vice president. Don't let my dad hear you say president.
Oh, yeah. Jeff will he'll be pretty upset. Well, so thanks, everyone.
Now I'd like to.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Justin. I'd like to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for joining. And I heard right before we turned on the sound, I heard we're actually almost at capacity today. So we need to put the bouncer out with the velvet rope. But I think that really shows that there's a lot of interest around reporting, right? And that making reporting work successfully in a vending or OCS or markets business is a challenge, right? And we know that there's a challenge. And one of the things, that we embarked on about 2 years ago was really rethinking how reporting works in a VMS. Mostly we did that because there were many operators that were talking to us that said, hey, we need your help. We're having really significant challenges. So I'm going to go through some of those challenges, and Duncan will talk about some of the challenges he faced in reporting. Then I'm going to give a demo of what we call Seed Spotlight, which is our new custom reporting tool that's part of Seed Office. And we think it really reimagines how you do reporting in a vending and OCS and markets business. And so we're happy to share it with you. It's been under wraps for a long time, and it's now coming out from under the covers. So thanks very much for spending your time with us today. We're going to talk about Duncan's actually been using this for a few months, and so he can give you the skinny on what's working and what's not, and what's sort of done for him and how well he can operate his business. I'll talk about availability and how you get a hold of Seed Spotlight, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So first, before I get into any of that, let me just level set, right? Because most of you are probably pretty familiar with Cantaloupe, but hopefully we have folks joining who are maybe not so familiar. So just at a high level, what we do as a company is we provide an end-to-end solution for vending, markets, and OCS. And so we focus on the management of the business, right? Whether that's the management in the office, management in the warehouse, management for the driver, right? Being able to ensure that you're as efficient as possible, you're delivering the highest quality of service as possible for your customers, and you could focus on the things that you want to do. And so part of that is we do cashless payments. We have highly reliable, high-speed cashless payments for credit cards, debit cards, mobile payments, you name it. Cashless is actually the fastest growing part of our business, which is very exciting. We have Seed Office, which is our VMS, right? It's our back room. Controls your warehouse, your money room. It contains Seed Mobile, which is our driver handheld app for iPod Touch and iPad and iPhone devices that can be trained on a driver in 15 minutes. We have Seed Pro, which is our higher end package that it really focuses on efficiency, right? The average Seed Pro operator reduces 40% of their routes via dynamic scheduling and pre-kitting, merchandising, and smart alerts. And so with that, we see an average uptick of about 6 points on the bottom line in terms of profit margin for operators that are on Seed Pro relative to the industry. And finally, Seed Delivery, right, is for managing an OCS business. And so that can either be part of Seed Office, or it can be standalone for operators that are running standalone delivery businesses. And we actually have one more box on here called Seed Markets, which is a newer product for us. It's actually be rolling out and in sort of in between a pilot and a beta stage with multiple micro-market partners, but again, focused on managing a business that does markets and OCS and vending all together. And so beneath all of this is Seed Cloud, right? We have there's no software to install when you want to use our products, but instead you call it up with a web browser on your iPad, on your PC, on your Mac, on your phone, and you can get it working. And so this means no servers to buy, no worry about getting, your server getting hacked. And the nice part about it also is, that we get the performance of the cloud, right? When we have a performance problem, we just add more servers, right? It's a very scalable infrastructure we have up there. It's very different if you're running the server and it's sitting in your server closet. All right, so you are here, right? Well, let's talk about reporting, and that nobody really likes reporting, right? It's always a hassle, and that we heard a lot of complaints from various operators. So before I go into what I've heard from other people, Duncan, what were some of the reporting challenges that you guys faced before Seed Spotlight?
Thanks, Justin. I mean, just a few that we were really looking at were, one, in today's VMS, the amount of information we can pull about our business is pretty much endless, but how do we get it? Where do we find it? And just trying to find information, sometimes we were settling on using canned or generic reporting formatting, and sometimes it's hard to train your employees or your management on how to pull that report or get the correct information out of a database. And sometimes the data wasn't the format you wanted it in, and you had to put it into a different format and manipulate it, and that takes time and effort. At the end of the day, is we hire people to sell business for us, manage our routes, manage our customers, and we're not hiring them to be, computer architects or computer engineers. We want, them to be able to share reporting with each other and run reports to get the information they want immediately, and we're getting to the point where does it make sense to hire someone from outside to come in and manage our database for us to generate reports for our management and our leadership and our ownership to run and direct our business.
Thanks, Duncan. I mean, and what's interesting is when I hear some of those concerns from Duncan, right, he's not alone, right? That we've heard similar things from almost every other operator that we've worked with, right? We hear complaints about how reporting and challenges in accessing data is distracting people from what they do every day, right? Whether that's a service manager or a CFO or a route manager, right? They're spending so much time trying to deal with getting the data out that they're not having the time they need to do the main part of their job. We also heard that a lot of VMS reporting systems are just really hard to learn and hard to train on, and that maybe there's one person in the office who knows how to do it because they've been using the system for 20 years. But if somebody new comes in or that guy gets hit by a bus, you're in a lot of trouble. And so we really wanted to figure out how we could make it easier for our operators. We also heard real concerns about performance. We heard these horror stories where people would have some reports to run, and they'd go out to lunch and they'd wait for the reports to come back. And I guess that's great if it works every time, but if it doesn't work, then it's another lunch and another lunch, and there's only so many lunches you can have in one day. And so we really sort of started from the ground up and really thinking about optimizing Seed Spotlight for performance. We also heard that, in terms of limitations, right? And Duncan sort of talked about this in terms of canned reports. And there's a lot of VMS systems out there, right, that may provide a large set of canned reports out of the box. But if you want something different than that, right, it's hard, right? Generally you don't have that capability to add new things and new columns and rearrange things and do things differently from how that canned report author talked about it, right? And so what Duncan mentioned at the end, we hear a lot of operators sort of pulling their hair and saying, do I need to go hire somebody? Do I need to go find a database developer at $100 or $200 an hour to go create custom reports for me? And obviously that's costly, but there are also hidden problems with that, because just just because you've built a report, right, you have to maintain it over time. You can't just sort of hire the guy once and he never comes back, but you're actually going to need to keep him around because inevitably the VMS platform changes or your needs are going to change over time, right? So you're signing yourself up for this long-term open-ended commitment that most vending operators are just not very enthusiastic about spending the money or the hassle to do that. And we've also heard operators that are stuck on an older version of a VMS. They can't upgrade because it'll break their reports, right? So they're kind of, in a catch-22 situation. So knowing all these concerns, and these are all things, we did a listening tour probably about 2 years ago and came up with a lot of these concerns from multiple operators. And at that point, we started the design work around Seed Spotlight. We've been hard at work at this for the last 2 years. And so let's talk about what Seed Spotlight's all about. So first of all, it's a customizable reporting solution for Seed Office, right? That first word, customizable, is really the most important piece, right? It enables you to be in control of your own data, right? If you don't want a column in your report, you can take it out. If you want another column in your report, you can add it in. If you don't like the order, you can move things around, right? That essentially we want to put you in the driver's seat so that you can take control of your own data rather than the other way around. We also really wanted to make it such that it's easy to use, right? Where you don't require advanced technology skills, you don't have to be a software developer, you don't even need to understand how databases work to be able to get data out of the system. And this was actually sort of the hardest part. There's a lot of, if you're willing to teach somebody how to be a computer programmer, there's a lot of ways you can build custom reports, but if you want to make it easy enough that anybody can use it, that's really where a lot of the time for us went in terms of how simple can we make it. We also really focused on performance, and over the last year or so, we've actually replumbed almost every part of how we store sales data inside of Seed so that we could make it faster, right? So because we knew we were going to build Spotlight on top of it, so we took the opportunity to essentially redo everything about how we store sales data to make it faster so that you can get results in seconds rather than minutes or hours like you might see on some of these old school VMS systems. And we really wanted it to be able to report on anything, right? Whether it's your sales, your warehouse, your assets, your service department, right? We didn't want to put constraints on what you could look at, but we really wanted to have it be broad across the entire platform. And the idea we had in our head is we just wanted to be like a search engine for your data, right? Everybody knows how to use Google. Everybody knows how to type stuff in, to sort of hunt around. If you don't quite know the right words, you can still manage. That's kind of the feeling we wanted to have for our reporting system. And finally, we wanted to make sure that once you got a report you were happy with, you were able to share it with the people in the way that you wanted, right? And sharing goes both ways, right? You want to share it with the people who should have it, but you don't want to share it with the people who shouldn't have it, right? So we wanted to have fine-grained access control over data so that you could, feel comfortable sharing it without the wrong eyeballs being able to get on your data. So in a nutshell, those are the principles behind the design of Seed Spotlight, but instead of more slideware, I'm just going to go pop over to a demo and show you how it works in real time. So let me go over to my browser here. Is this the right one? I have two browsers open. Okay, let's hope this is the right one. All right, so first of all, I'm going to, let me go to the Seed Pro homepage here and go over to Spotlight Reports. It'll be the first item on your reports menu. The old report writer is still there, right? So if you're familiar with how the report writer works in Seed, that's not going away anytime soon, so don't worry. And so I clicked on Seed Spotlight Reports here, right? This is the Spotlight Reports homepage. And what we see here is, first of all, even though I just spent a little while talking trash about canned reports, we built some canned reports, right? Because even though it's easy to build your own reports in the Seed Spotlight, we also wanted to give examples of sort of reports that you could use and also reports that you could copy for your own use. So in this case, I can take one of these reports, I can run it, right? And let's actually go run one of these reports here. And you notice they're arranged in groups, right? So each group is essentially, all sales means sales across all lines of business, right? Across vending and delivery and markets. It's a high level reporting. Delivery is obviously digging into your delivery sales. Vending is digging into your vending sales. We have some warehouse reporting, and what's funny is I actually built 45 reports last night. And so all of these reports are very easy to extend, and we'll be adding more and more and more reports because it only takes us a few minutes or you a few minutes to be able to create reports on your own. So let's actually dig in and run one of these reports, and I'll show you the power of Spotlight and what we can do with it. So I'm now going to go pick out on the all sales report, going to go run a customer and line of business report. So I'm clicking on here. And so each report has a title, it has a little description so you can understand what it is. And part of every report is a filter. So let's actually just go pick a date range here. And you notice there's like a one-click way to choose a date range. So if I went last month, that's just one click, and I'm gonna run it. And so this is going to go take my last months of data across all lines of business. And by the way, the data we're showing here, this is actually a real operator. We've changed all the names to these funny company names that we found on the internet, but the data is actually a real operator with all the names changed. And so I think this operator has maybe 500 or 600 machines. They're a pretty small operator. But you notice, right, the results came back in just a few seconds, right? If you didn't notice that, I'm just going to run it again. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, there we go. So about 6 seconds to run that back. What's interesting is I can run this on Duncans machines, and it'll take a little bit longer, probably take 10 or 15 seconds. But again, that's very different from 10 or 15 minutes that you might be used to. So here we see a report for customer and line of business, right? So in this case, you have your university customer, their vending line of business. You see their total revenue. I can look at their gross margin, my net margin. I can sort by, let's see, my highest margin customer. Here's my worst customer. Here's my highest margin customer. Is these guys com-centric? I can also add filters, right? So if I want to add a filter for, actually, you know what? Let's show something. I'm going to illustrate this. So the filter section over here is showing you a few things. One is it's where you can set up your, in this case, a date range, but there's also some filters that are grayed out. What that means is these are filters that have been added by the author of the report, that if you don't have permission to change it, then you won't be able to change it, right? So that's helpful when you have sort of lower skilled employees and you want to kind of lay a path down for them so that they know what to do. So anyway, I'm going to go illustrate one more kind of report here, and then we're going to go actually show you how you can make changes to the canned reports that we have right out of the box. So I'm going to go run an equivalent report by customer for the vending line of business. So again, I'm going to choose last month. I'm going to go run that, and you notice here it now says the filter says line of business equals vending. I don't know if you might not be able to see that on your screen because it's kind of a light gray, but I'm going to go run that. And so this is going to take a subset of my business focused on vending. And I've got some more columns here, right, that are appropriate for vending, right? So I look at my sales quantity, my fills in my vending machine, my spoils, etc. And let's make some changes now. So first, let's add a filter. Let's say I only want to look at customers. So I'm just going to type in customer contains dance, because let's say I have a bunch of dance studios. So I'm now going to go run that. And I went through that pretty fast right here, but essentially I went up here, typed in something. Let me delete this so you could see in slow motion what I just did. I typed in customer. So in fact, I kind of just typed in cust, right? And just like Google, we essentially have a column search engine, right? With it has help text and it has descriptions and paths of how you get to this data. And in this case, I'm going to go pick this. See, there's two options for customer. One is right on the customer, right? This is a by customer report. Almost always you want the shorter one, right? These things over here are called paths. This is essentially how you get from the by customer to the data that you want. So I could go over here just right on the customer, or I could take this weird circuitous route that goes through a micro market. No, I'm just going to take a customer. So I pick that. Now look at all the things I can do with my customer. I can see if it contains something. I can see if it's less than or equal to. Does it start with or ends with, right? If you're used to sort of filtering in Excel, this is very similar. So again, I'm going to add this contains, going to choose dance, go run that report. And again, filtering report just takes a few seconds to run here. So that's how I add filters, right? Well, let's actually do a little bit more surgery on this report. Let's actually go edit the report. And you notice that that customer code column was blank. So let's just delete it. Great, let's run it again. All right, so now I've got my just my customer with no customer code, right? If I want to maybe rearrange some of these columns, so let's say I want to go take my sold quantity and move it up, because that's what I'm most interested by for whatever reason. So great, I've just rearranged something, and let's say I want to rename a column. So let's say I want to call this fills instead of sold quantity. Great, I can run it again. All right, so there we go. So now I've got customer and fills, right? So I've essentially taken a canned report right out of the box and changed it. I've made it different in the way that I want it. Not only can I go remove things and move stuff around, but I'm gonna go edit again. I'm gonna go add something else. I'm gonna go add how many assets are at this customer. And again, this is a vending report. So let's move this up over here underneath the customer. And let's call this machines. So that's how many vending machines I have. And let's go run that. There we go. So here's the number of vending machines of this customer, right? So you get the basic idea is that you can just go edit your report, type in whatever you want, right? And there's literally hundreds of different columns that you can choose from of various kinds of data. And Seat Spotlight does the hard work of figuring out how that data should show up in your report, right? So my custom, if I type in machines here, it knows that, oh, that's a number of machines. Whereas if I want to go filter up here, it does the right thing. So you can read the release notes as a seed customer, and you can get lots more detail about how this process works. But you get the basic idea where you can add your own columns, remove columns, rearrange columns, rename columns. So this is cool. But we actually started with an existing report, and if I want to, I can just save this out as a new report. But let's actually start from scratch. Right, this is definitely something that you can't do anywhere else. So, so let's go pick a one. And actually, I went back a little quickly. So, what you do when you create a report, I'm going to go start a new report here. And starting a new report essentially means you answer one question, which is one row for every what, right? So either I can do a quick start, which is one row for every one thing, right? And here's I don't know, 20, 25 different things you can choose. Or you can actually choose a complex report, right, where you can have one row for every combination of something. So this is like every supplier in every branch. So you can have a cross product of those things, or every item or every product ordered by every customer, right? If you want a big chunk of data that way. So today we're going to do a simpler version of this. Let's say one row for each asset. There's a default set of columns that come along with every data source that we just added, right? So if I were to choose customer, I'd get a different list of columns here. And let's start adding some columns. So let's go find out, first of all, how many items were sold in this. Let's see, let's go pick this. You notice there's actually two choices here. This visit sales thing is actually going away right after this. We couldn't quite get the change in time for this this webinar, but this will be a little bit simpler in about an hour. So I've now got my sold quantity here. Let's move it up to the top. And let's actually look at, and this is really where Seat Spotlight shines, is let's go look at some other kind of data that's completely unrelated to sales. Let's go pick service tickets. Right, so I want to see how many service calls I've had to make for this particular asset, and bring it up here. And now let's add some filters. Let me go add. Whoops. Let's go add line of business. Where did I go? Here we go. I'm going to go add line of business. Notice you can hide columns, right? So I can add a column and hide it, and I'll show you a few cases why you might want to hide things. One is when you want to filter on it. So I'm going to go line of business is equal to vending. And let's say I'm only interested in sales for soda. Okay, so I'm going to go say, let's see what it was. What is that? Let's have a category maybe. Here we go, item category. So again, you'd only have to type a few things before, and let's say any category that contains soda. So you don't really need to know exactly what things are in order to pull data out of Seed Spotlight. So now I've got my sales for soda. I've got my service tickets. Let's see, and let's go run it. Let's make sure it works. Oops. And you notice whenever something doesn't work, a little red thing comes up, says, hey, here's what you need to do. Let's go pick last month. And it tells you your filters are needed. Let's go run it. Great, there we go. So I've now got my my vending machine, how many items have sold, how many service tickets were created this month. And let's say that I have this weird metric that my boss wants me to figure out of, are we spending too much technician time on soda machines? So let's actually create a custom metric here. So let's go to Edit Report and click this button that says Add Formula Column. So I'm going to create a formula called sodas per service ticket. And this is a decimal. And just like in Excel, right, it's very easy to create formulas in Seed Spotlight. So let's actually go, then this is sodas per service ticket. So it's sold quantity divided by the number of service tickets. And this little checker down here makes sure that your formula is correct. Let's go move this up here. Let's go run it. All right, so here is my sodas per service ticket, and I could sort and I could see the most efficient, the most efficient place over here is Zorg Industries number 1411 with 1,400 sodas per service ticket, right? So this is obviously sort of a silly example, but you can imagine how formulas like this can be really useful, right? You can imagine custom commission calculations for salespeople, or custom calculations of really strange, location commissions, or metrics or KPIs that you want, performance indicators that you want to measure your schedulers or measure your routemen on. All of these are possible by creating your own formulas. And not only can you create your own formulas, but you can actually add your own data into Seed as well. And this is part of Spotlight. So I'm going to go flip over to the Setup Fields page. And so here is custom fields. We now have the ability to add fields onto customers, locations, items, and assets inside of, and assets meaning vending machines or delivery points or market sections. And you can see here's a few custom fields that I've already created here. I've created a field for customer tier, right? Essentially, what's the quality of service you want to deliver to this customer. I've created a tier for whether there's like a security issue at this location, and another custom field for whether this is a healthy item or not, right? And these fields you can actually bring back into Spotlight, right? So if I wanted to add, this is, let's see, let's go take edit here, and I'm gonna go add customer tier. Here we go, here's customer tier. So I can bring that on. And now when I want to run my report, let's go bring this up a little bit. Customer tier, let's go run this. Great, here's my customer tier, right? So again, not only can you create your own formulas, but you can add your own custom data. You can actually bulk export and bulk import custom fields into and out of Excel. Right, so I actually have an Excel file here with an example of customer tiers that I would set up before, and I can just, we're kind of low on time, so I can't really show it today, but we can actually just take this data, import it right back into Seed, so you can set your custom fields in bulk, which is helpful when you set it up, or you can edit them directly. So if I want to go to a customer and go edit this customer, and here's my custom field, right, with a little help text to explain how it works. So if I want to add another custom field to this, so let's say add a new custom field, let's call this Duncan's favorite customer. Let's say this is, and when you create a custom field, it can be any one of these types, right? So it's not just a piece of text that you have to figure out, but we'll actually enforce some validation on that. So is this Duncan favorite? Yes or no, right? And no, because he's kind of a tough customer. So, and then he likes it. And I go save that. And now if I want to go look at editing this customer, I'm going to refresh the page. And here is the Duncan favorite field that I can set to yes or no, right? So no, because it's, typed, right? We tell you what type it is. That means if it's a yes or no, the only values that are acceptable are yes or no. You don't have people entering garbage data. So anyway, this is a very high level view of how Spotlight works. I encourage you to try it out, right? If you're already a Seed Office customer, if you're not a Seed Office customer, then contact Cantaloupe Sales. But if you are, then definitely try it out. Send us feedback. It's a new product or a new feature, so I'm sure there's going to be some kinks along the way. And thanks so much for your patience while I went through this this demo. Let me go flip back to the slides here. So Duncan, you've been using Spotlight for a while. Why don't you talk about your experience with Seed Spotlight?
Justin, I have a few months worth of experience with it, and I really appreciate you guys letting me kind of run some tests. It really helped to kind of organize some of our data and really get some really good information back. And one of the things we're really working with right now or working on, I should say, is merchandising our markets and machines for increased sales and efficiencies. And one of the things I was able to generate, we were able to generate using Seed Spotlight was to segment sales and vending versus markets, and what products sell in vending versus what products sell in markets. The reason we're using that is, as for a next best list. And sometimes, items that sell in vending don't always sell in markets. And also to segment that further, we were doing it by region as well. So, we cover a very large territory geographically, and to know what sells in the northern part of our territory versus the southern part helps us to merchandise our machines and markets for maximum performance, which is what we're really concerned about. So, the examples you were giving, is kind of exactly what we were doing, trying to, basically running Excel spreadsheets, man, and that's knowing if you have a basic understanding of Excel, utilizing Seed Spotlight, it falls right in line with that knowledge. Another item that we were really able to utilize Seed Spotlight for is filtering with UDFs for personal property taxes, which is a item we're concerned about in Michigan because it's done at a local level versus a state or national level. So having a personal property tax defined field helps our Vice President of Finance find information quickly. It's, it takes her minutes versus hours now with that field. One thing I think I mentioned in a previous call with you, Justin, was I was curious of what our cashless usage was with coffee machines. We put cashless on coffee machines as a test. We really don't get anything out of having telemetry on a coffee machine, other than increased sales. So where are our sales increase, and where is the cashless being utilized in coffees? And that was, able to run that report through a few simple, filters, and contains coffee in the description, and boom, I had the report on where our coffee machines were doing well or not well with cashless. So it was a very, very powerful tool. So it's just really the beginning of a few items that I've really found as feedback from this reporting change with you guys. I think it's a great a lot of good information can come out of it.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Duncan. And it's what's nice about it is we've been, because 2 years ago we went on this tour and talked to a bunch of customers, and they said, we want this right away. So Duncan and everybody else has been beating us up for 2 years, and I'm so happy that we could finally give them what they're looking for, because that's kind of what we like to do. I mean, we talk to our customers, we figure out what our customers are needing. We work with our engineers to get it built. We put our heads down, and now it's sort of the nice part of it where we're actually able to get it out there, get feedback, and start improving it. And so I'm really grateful for folks like Duncan who can test stuff out early and give us that feedback we need to be able to make it better. And so first, before we head into the Q&A, I wanted to give a quick set of thoughts. First is Seed Spotlight is going to be available sometime later this afternoon to all Seed Office operators. We need to go make a few tweaks right after this call, and I'm actually headed off to the airport. So if everything turns out right, I'm going to turn on access for everybody from my Uber. So if not, it'll be later on this afternoon. You may need to log out and log back in, but you should definitely have it by the end of the day. I encourage you to read the release notes. There's very detailed documentation in there that explains in a lot more detail than what I went through today of how you use Seed Spotlight. One thing that everybody will probably get tripped up on is by default, it's only accessible for administrators, right? This is a powerful tool. We want to make sure that people, sort of very consciously give access to their people. And so there's a section in the release notes that explains how to set up permissions and groups for non-administrators to be able to get access. A few more tips and tricks. If you're working with a lot of data, I strongly suggest you take it out to Excel, right? We can render up to 50,000 rows in the show up to 50,000 rows in the browser, but honestly, any more than that is a recipe to crash your browser, right? It's nothing really to do with us, but browsers are just not meant for heavy duty data wrangling. And so if you have something with a very large number of rows, let's say you're a large operator and you want to look at every item ordered by every customer, that's something you're definitely going to want to do in Excel. And the good news is we've actually done some work to really speed up our export to Excel features. And so we've actually sped up large exports to Excel by a factor of 10 as part of the Seed Spotlight work. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how fast it is to be able to get huge chunks of data out into Excel for external manipulation. Next is, if you don't know what something's called, don't despair, right? Essentially just think of what we might call it and start typing, right? It really works like Google. And so, good example is fills, right? We call fills added quantity, right? You might not know that, but if you type in fills, we were smart enough to include the word fill in the documentation for the field added quantity. So we really try, and what we'll do is we'll improve that each documentation of each data source in each column over time. So our search engine for data will get better and better and better. Next is a good hint is always add columns first, right? Think about the data you want and then figure out how you're going to filter it. And the reason why that's important is the way that Seed Spotlight works is it gives you more opportunities for filtering as you add more columns. So a good example is, remember I showed you I added service tickets in there. If I didn't add service tickets in there, you couldn't filter on service tickets because you haven't brought service tickets into the report yet. So that's sort of a good way to think. And another, we didn't really show this too much, but I mentioned that you can hide columns. Well, one thing we see a lot of operators doing is using hidden columns and formulas to be a powerful combination together. And so in that case, you can use the hidden columns as the source of your data, and then use the formula as something you actually expose out. Let's say it's like salesperson commissions, where you don't necessarily want to show the raw data, you just want to show the money that the salesperson's going to get. You can do that. And finally, please send us some feedback. Use the product. Let us know what you think. We're definitely, there's a lot of things on the roadmap that we want to get doing, and your feedback will help us prioritize what we're going to work on next. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over for Q&A. And Elisa, how do we want to do it? Do you want to ask the questions? Do you want me to read them? What's the right etiquette here?
I think it makes sense for you to go ahead and determine if it's a question that you can answer, or maybe you want to deflect to Duncan to answer. But I will post them in our internal chat area so you can see the questions.
That sounds great. So I'm looking at the first question, which is, are there fees? Nope. This is part of Seed Office. It is, if you're a Seed Office operator, you'll get it with no additional fee. We are looking over the long term at like a high-end version of this that'll have some particularly high-end capabilities in terms of massive data manipulation and exports and APIs and stuff like that. That's really on the very early drawing board. If we do something like that, we'll need to cover our costs, right? Because that kind of stuff gets pretty expensive in terms of data center hosting. But the basic stuff we all saw today is just included in Seed Office. All right, let's see. I see some more questions flowing in here. Okay. Let's take a look. Hold on, I have a few. questions here. Sorry, there's a bunch of questions, so I'm trying to figure out the right ones. Let's see, so one of the questions is, well, it looks like there's a lot of data in there. What's a good way to learn what's available in here? And so your best bet is essentially to think of what you want to report on and start typing. Essentially try it. You can always, search for a column. Let's see if I were to go to, let's see, let's go Spotlight, let's go new report. If I want to see what data sources are available, you can just look, right? And it's helpful to sort of read through this list and understand what kind of data is available. The list will grow over time. And then if I pull in, let's say I want to report by asset, right? Duncan talked about cashless, right? So I can just start typing cashless and see what's available. And I have a has seed cashless option. I have a cashless sales. I can look at my cash discount. So essentially the best way to figure out what's in here is essentially to try it, and then look in the box and then scroll down and see what's available. Next question is the old report writer going away? No, the old report writer is not going away. It's still going to be around, right? If you're familiar with the old report writer, it actually is very similar. So if I look at a vending restock sales by customer, and I look at last month, it works very similar to Spotlight we've just seen, except you can't add more columns and you can't, there's less flexibility and there's no formulas. But this report writer, your people are familiar with it. It actually runs on the same underlying data as Spotlight, right? The user experience is different. It's reminding I need to go to the airport in a little bit. The user experience is different, but the data is going to be the same. Let's see, the next question is, what is the largest report I can run? So I mentioned before that if you're going to display the results in the browser, we're limited to 50,000 rows. We're still working out what the limits are going to be for Excel exports. It's certainly going to be in the hundreds of thousands. I know the Excel file format itself has a limit of 1 million rows. So 1 million rows is a lot. So we're still trying to figure out what those upper limits are, but essentially almost all reporting within reason is going to be accessible within Spotlight. Now that said, the number of cells, the performance you see is largely based on how many cells are going to come back. And so if you're going to output something that has, we had a customer recently that was trying to do something that had 3 million cells, and they were complaining it was taking a long time. I'm like, well, you're loading 3 million cells. It takes a while. And so it's actually the transmission of data back and forth, and your own internet connection is often the biggest bottleneck, that our servers actually process the data really, really fast, but getting it down to you might take a little while. So, if you're building a report, it's helpful to take stuff out if it's not needed, because that'll make it faster for us and faster for you. Next is what's next? What are the next features for Seed Spotlight? There's some basic stuff we're looking at in terms of usability, right? We really want to make sure it is as easy to use as possible, and we'll use people's feedback from from our initial set of users to be able to figure out what we work on next. One thing we know we're going to do next, and actually I see another question coming in here, is there a way to compare 2 or more time periods without running multiple reports? Not today, but that's actually at the top of our list, right? We think we have a pretty cool way to handle not only multiple time periods, but also comparing one route against each other, comparing one branch against each other, one customer against each other, and a really sort of cool way to support a lot of those use cases when you want to compare one thing to another within the context of one report. So it's not there yet. It's a pretty significant work item for us, but that's kind of the biggest thing we see coming around the corner later this year. And also the basic stuff, like we're going to add totals, we're going to add probably some easier diagnostics when things go wrong. We're certainly going to work on even further performance improvements, right? Because even though we can run a lot of these reports in a few seconds, that's not enough for me. So want to make sure that it gets a little faster. But those are sort of the big things we have coming up. Next question is, can you schedule reports to automatically run? So that's actually a great question, and that one of the things we've seen is that most use of scheduling in most VMSs honestly seems like most people do it because the VMSs are so slow at bringing back results that you need to schedule it so it runs in the middle of the night, because otherwise it'll slow the whole system down for everybody in order to get results. Seed Spotlight is so fast that you can get a lot of these results on demand. And so the other thing we've seen in terms of scheduling with VMS is that operators will set up maybe tens or even hundreds of scheduled reports, and nobody really looks at them. And so for us, right, because if you're running hundreds of reports in the middle of the night, that's actually a pretty significant data center cost for us. So one of the things we're looking at is there a way that we can make it, we can essentially have a cost incentive on that. So if we were to offer scheduling, there's going to have to be something that the operators are paying for it, less so much because we want to turn it into a profit center, but we want to make sure that people are not scheduling massive numbers of reports and then not using them. So, so yes, scheduling is definitely something we're looking at. We're not really sure what the cost model is going to be around that, and we need to make sure it works well for our data center. So it's a little bit challenging for us. It's not something we're going to get to soon, but on the bright side, because Seed Spotlight is so fast, in a lot of cases you don't need to schedule it if you don't have to. All right, so next question is, there's a general question around reporting accuracy. And so one of the things that I mentioned before, that we've replumbed the way we store and manage sales data, right? This is something that I think we've done twice in the history of our company, and once we did it last year. And one of the things, if you're familiar with any sort of technology or any kind of process, right, where if you change something that used to work before, you're going to break stuff, right? It's just we have the best QA engineers that I've ever worked with, and we still break stuff. And that what we can commit to is, if we find problems with the data that we have, we will fix them as soon as humanly possible. And so there admittedly have been a few hiccups along the way as we've replumbed our sales data. Those should be either resolved now or will be resolved very soon. And we encourage you, if you see data that doesn't make sense, feel free to raise it to us, right? Because we take data integrity and data accuracy really, really seriously. And we try to be very transparent about the problems we have and when we can fix it. So we want to be sensitive to that. And we also want to, we also can't sort of stay the same, right? We're going to move forward. We're going to add features. Sometimes those features we're going to add are going to break. We have very, very good QA behind this. And I want to express our, how much we care about accuracy, and we're going to get it fixed. All right, next question. Let's see, any more questions here? Question is, can if statements be used? And I would expand that to be, can you have functions? Can you have the other kinds of things you can do in Excel? The technology we have supports that. We haven't enabled it because I actually have some security and denial of service concerns around that, right? That we essentially need to be really, really sure that the more surface area, the more stuff that people can do, that it doesn't impact the stability of our systems. And so it's on the roadmap. We want to enable that at some point. It's not something we're probably going to do very soon, but we certainly have the capability to do it. And it's something we want to get to. Next question is Spotlight available to me as a Seed Pro user, meaning someone who's not on Seed Office? So the challenge we have right now is that most of the data sources that matter in Spotlight are Seed Office specific, right? So that's restock to restock sales, OCS, markets, service tickets, warehouse transactions. And so as we start adding more data sources to Spotlight, we will look at whether we want to make it available to people who are not on Seed Office. Today, the answer is no, but we're definitely looking at it. And so you know, it's definitely something we're considering. All right, next question. Can you show me how to run a report that shows all customers with pricing by category, looking for a customer that needs price increases? Let's see how we would do that. I tell you what, that might take me a few minutes to figure out, and we're kind of running low on time. So I would encourage whoever asked that question to reach out to your customer success manager at Cantaloupe, and that question will get to me, and then we can see if we can build that report for you. All right, and also if we here we go. There's one more question here, which is a short one, which is who should we send feedback to on Spotlight? The best way to send us feedback is if you go to Spotlight Reports. On the home page, there is this yellow box with a link in here that says got feedback. So we encourage you to fill out the survey. Survey has a bunch of questions around what were you trying to do? You know, the more details, the better. What did work? What didn't work? What do you think we should do next? And any more feedback for us. We look at every one of these, and so we really encourage you to send that feedback. If for whatever reason the survey isn't how you want to deliver that feedback, you can also sort of send it through your usual feedback channels where you send the rest of your feedback. But I encourage you to really go through that survey, because that's the stuff that's in there will be looked at very closely. And so finally, I think that looks like the last question here. So if we didn't get to your question today, that our team is always happy to follow up. So contact your customer success manager, your CSM. If you don't have a CSM or you don't know who your CSM is, feel free to contact Cantaloupe support and they'll tell you. And we're happy to follow up. And if you're not on Seed Office, then hopefully Seed Spotlight is a good reason to get on. And if you're not a Cantaloupe customer yet, well, hopefully we've shown you an example of some of the stuff we can do. And so we'd hopefully we're going to have you as a customer soon. Okay, well that's about it. And I really want to thank Duncan for your help, not only on today's webinar, but the help for the last few years in terms of getting great feedback, in the last few months in terms of helping us with Spotlight. And Elisa and Marilee also, thank you so much for putting this on, and thanks everybody.
Hey Justin, thanks for having me on. I want to also thank you for all the time and development you spent putting this report writer together. Seed Spotlight, like I said earlier, it's ease of use is very low. I mean, it's very easy to use, and once you have a very short amount of training on it, it's very, very powerful. So thank you.
That's great. And I realized I forgot to show one thing, which was saving reports. So I'll show you right here. So if you want to save a report, you just give it a name. You say Duncan's Cool Report. And it's either a personal report, which means it's just for your own use, or it's shared. And if you want to share it, you can choose who you want to share it with. If you have custom groups that you've created in your account, you can give it to one or more of those custom groups, right? So if you want to really give it fine-grained control over who can run it, then you have that ability. And so I can just save this here, and who can run is required. Let's say only administrators, and save. And now I go to Spotlight Reports, and here's Duncan's Cool Report. So anyway, that's the last part of my demo. Thanks everybody for your time. Hopefully we'll see you soon on the next webinar. Bye-bye.